But today, we're going to look a little bit closer at a group of people you've probably never even knew existed, but they live in a place that we all have heard about. There is nothing on this planet like Death Valley. California is not all just beaches and Hollywood, people. One of the greatest deserts on this planet is in California, too. There are salt flats and sand dunes. There's badlands and valleys, canyons and mountains. Some people have said this place is God without mankind. Some other people have called it lonely beauty, a sacred void. For the people of the Timbisha land, they call it painted rocks. It is one of the lowest and the driest and the hottest places on earth. From the very top of Telescope Peak to the very bottom of Badwater Basin, the Timbisha land is twice the depth of the Grand Canyon. And smack in the middle of Death Valley is a place that is just a geographical oddity. There is an isolated underwater cavern that has been here for 25,000 years. And inside this cavern, there is a very special fish. It is called the Death Valley pupfish. And in the entire planet, it only lives here. It lives at the bottom of a place we call Devil's Hole. There you go. There's the opening of Devil's Hole. So if you want to see this fish, you're going to have to get on your scuba gear and all kinds of ropes and stuff just to get lower down in here. Be prepared for water that's 119 degrees Fahrenheit. These pupfish are actually teaching scientists about how to adapt in very adverse conditions. Any other fish would literally die in this water because it's so small, it's so isolated. Here is a picture of what the cavern actually looks like, the best that scientists can map it right now. It's very small compared to where most fish are used to living and very hot. In an era of global warming and climate change, these fish hold the key to our survival as our temperatures start to kick up. But there is another group living here, living in Death Valley, that share a very similar story. It is a group of human beings. They are called the Timbisha people. When these people came to Death Valley in California, it was before the land was called California, before the valley had the word death in it. They came about 1,000 years ago, and at the time, the valley had big horned sheep and rabbits and lizards and marmot, and of course, lots of hot springs everywhere. The people would travel around this area with the season. So up in the mountains, they'd go in the summer, and then down in the valley in the winter. They would be eating pine nuts and local beans. That was the major part of their diet. In the desert, there's lots of small bushes that grow around, and it's perfect hiding spots for their favorite meals, like mule deer and rabbits. Specifically, they liked black-tail rabbits, and they caught those rabbits with baskets they wove from the nearby grasses. They used the baskets for carrying stuff, for making animal traps, for boiling water. What I like is the Timbisha tell this legend of a very evil queen, and she wanted to build a palace that would rival the Aztecs down in the south. And so as she wanted to build this palace, it only ended up being half built because of her greed. She forced her workers to work harder in the heat and faster and more gold and better and bigger kind of thing. But in the end, she was abandoned by her people, and she died in the desert in her half-built palace. Legend says, if you look into the horizon in the summer sun, you can often see her in the dream palace rising in the mirage. In 1849, the Timbisha land was invaded. The gold rush brought people into California, and some of those people wandered into the homelands of the Timbisha, and they wandered into something they did not understand. In the 1850s, as these new people came through, the heat overwhelmed them and they were forced to eat their own oxen to survive. Upon being rescued, upon walking out of the valley, one of those 49ers said, "Goodbye, Death Valley," and the name just stuck. Of course, the 49ers went back to San Francisco and the other coastal towns and told them about this valley. And soon enough, more and more people came out to Death Valley. Maybe the new people wanted to see the sacred void and this beauty for themselves. Maybe they came because they were adventurers and they wanted to challenge Mother Nature and prove they were tough. But maybe some people came because greed glittered in their eyes and they wanted to search for gold here. They wanted to search for silver here. They wanted to use the borax. The 1850s was a very rough time for the indigenous people of the Timbisha land. But when the gold rush was over, something else was brewing over in Europe. In 1945, the Timbisha faced a new challenge. In 1945, the world was awfully busy. They were recovering from World War I, and World War II was already brewing. And in 1945, the United States started conducting nuclear tests. On August 6, 1945, the United States had made 2 nuclear bombs, and they used them. And then they continued testing. On December 28th, so just a quick little history of this. On December 28th, 1942, President Roosevelt authorized the formation of the Manhattan Project, whose sole purpose was to research nuclear power. And on July 6, 1945, the first atom bomb was tested in New Mexico, very, very close to the Shoshone homelands. People started protesting the nuclear power in the 1960s because the world was starting to see what the nuclear fallout actually did. For example, exposure to radiation and nuclear fallout after the blast, like if you survive the blast and you're living in the radiation areas, you're going to get sickness. Your children are going to have deformities. We're talking cancer, death. This is some bad stuff. One testing site in Nevada was a little too close to the Timbisha land for comfort. This black arrow is where the Timbisha are actually living. This is their homelands. The red arrow is the Nevada test site for nuclear weapons. In fact, the fallout from these tests in the Nevada site actually reached thousands of miles away because the winds blow across the desert. After 1957, all nuclear testing went underground. It didn't stop. It went underground, probably due to all those protests, right? I need you to do me a favor and go look this up. And then go look this up. On July 6, 1962, something happened. And in July of 2010, 48 years later to the month, the US government paid out $1.5 billion to the victims and their families that lived in Nevada, Utah, Arizona, thousands of miles away. You need to look this up. So really, when you look at the survival of a species, we look at some biological factors, we look at some environmental factors, we study, we look closely, we get a microscope, we get a chart, we graph what we can see. But what about when people face something impossible? These people faced extreme heat, extremely vast open spaces. They faced nuclear fallout, broken treaties, stolen water. You're not going to find a lot of those natural hot springs anymore. Somebody took them. How did they take them? And how are these people still here? What did they do to survive? I want to learn how to be strong like that. I want to hear what their language sounds like. I want to hear what they say about World War II. I want to know how they viewed those 20 mule teams that dragged the borax out of their land. I want to know what they think about that little blue pupfish. I want to know what they think about that underwater cavern. Today, the tribe is working with environmental groups on these nuclear testing issues. Some members of the tribe are working to get their language in their own dictionary and writing down their ancestral stories, like the one of that evil queen. Some of the others are working to get a casino in Ridgecrest, but the U.S. government placed restrictions on their reservation because their homeland is within a national park. Yet others are working to get their ancestral lands back in their hands of their people, not the National Park Service. In May 1996, these people are marching to bring awareness to their ongoing conflicts with the U.S. government and conflicts with environmental groups. Here is their town today. These are the adobe structures they live in now. Biologists and conservationists, environmentalists are all looking at the pupfish in the depths of a small underwater cavern to help the rest of us understand climate change and survival. Yet we need to look closer at the people who survive here, who thrive here, who learn to overcome extreme loss and extreme heat. And they are the ones who are already marching into the future.